Where in the world is Steve McBee Sr.? Steve Sr. is nowhere to be found on Season 2 of the McBee Dynasty, Real American Cowboys. Steve Sr. abandoned the McBee Dynasty and put his business in harm's way after a deal went bad. Romantic tensions reached a boiling point, and he allegedly engaged in illegal activities. Although Steve Sr. is absent from Season 2 of the McBee Dynasty, he continues to cause problems for the family and the farm. The McBee Dynasty is on Bravo for the second season of this chaotic reality show. The McBees are a ranching and farming family in Missouri doing their best to stay afloat. The first season saw Steve Sr. as the patriarch and head of the business, trying to determine which son was suited to take over. However, after a series of both personal and business mistakes, Steve Sr. abandoned the show, leaving them to clean up his mess. The McBee's business is at risk in the McBee Dynasty Season 2. When we last saw the McBee family in Season 1, Steve Sr. and the siblings had learned that the venture capital deal had fallen through, leaving McBee Farm and Cattle responsible for $6 million due in November. Instead of fixing it himself, Steve Sr. simply left. Steve Sr.'s disappearance left a trail of destruction that his kids now need to clean up, starting with saving the ranch. Since Steve Sr. disappeared, his eldest son, Stephen McBee Jr., has taken on the role of de facto head of the family, but not everything is going smoothly. To try to earn the money to pay off the $6 million, Stephen has started selling farmland because he believes that their crops are not making enough income, and the real money is in meat production. According to Stephen, that will be the most efficient way to save the business. On the flip side, Cole McBee believes Stephen has the wrong idea. Cole purchased land behind Stephen's back to produce soybeans. Cole made this move primarily due to the influence of Steve Sr., who told Cole to trust his instincts and believed Cole was the only sibling who truly loved the ranch. Stephen did not take the choice well, causing a strain on the brothers. So now, both the farm and the relationships with the McBee siblings are struggling because of Steve Sr. The McBee Dynasty's Steve Sr. has hurt Galina by having an affair. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. And trust me, more than one woman has been scorned, because debt is not all that Steve Sr. left behind. Galina Saltkowska is Steve Sr.'s ex-girlfriend, but she is also an investor in the family business. Galina is sticking around to help the younger McBees, specifically Stephen, but don't get it twisted. Galina wants nothing to do with Steve Sr. after he had an affair with Galina's friend, Masha, behind her back. When Stephen's girlfriend, Calla Jackson, gives Galina a friendly heads-up about Masha being at the lodge, Masha's car is, coincidentally, destroyed. Despite what Galina says, everyone assumes she is responsible for wrecking Masha's car. With the number of expletives that Galina threw Steve Sr.'s way, it wouldn't be a surprise if she lashes out in an even worse way that jeopardizes her future and the future of McBee Farm and Cattle even further, just to get revenge. Galina is trying to focus on rebuilding the company she has invested time and money into. Nevertheless, Steve Sr.'s betrayal is getting in the way. The feds have been poking around in the McBee Dynasty Season 2. Besides the debt and vengeful ex, there is the looming threat of an FBI investigation. Thanks to Steve Sr., this is not the first time someone from a Bravo show has been investigated by the feds. The McBee Dynasty has not brought it up yet, but Steve Sr.'s arrest and conviction is public knowledge. Steve Sr. has been convicted of fraud involving crop insurance. It is clear from previews that the FBI investigation will have a significant impact on Season 2 of the McBee family. There is no telling what Steve Sr.'s criminal actions will mean for the farm, or if the McBee siblings will once again have to pick up the pieces left by their father. The McBee siblings may be real American cowboys, but they are also completely on their own now that their father has ditched them to avoid facing the consequences. Despite being absent from the McBee Dynasty, Steve Sr. has found a way to turn his family upside down completely, put the business in danger, and ruin relationships. He might have left the McBee Dynasty, but Steve Sr.'s actions continue to have consequences that risk the ranch. The Missouri sun beat down on the McBee farm and cattle ranch, but its warmth offered little comfort. A chill had settled over the sprawling property, a cold shadow cast by the man who was no longer there. Steve McBee Sr., his absence was a gaping wound, a void that echoed with the clatter of unpaid bills, the whispers of betrayal, and the distant, ominous hum of federal scrutiny. Season 2 of the McBee Dynasty had begun, and the patriarch, the very foundation of their chaotic empire, had simply vanished, leaving his sons and a scorned ex-lover to navigate the wreckage. The $6 million debt loomed like a storm cloud on the horizon, a direct consequence of Steve Sr.'s ill-fated venture capital deal. November was approaching, a briefing on Bravo that felt less like a date and more like a ticking time bomb. Instead of facing the music, Steve Sr. had orchestrated his own vanishing act, leaving his eldest, Stephen Jr., to pick up the pieces. Stephen, thrust into the role of de facto head, carried the weight of the family's future on his broad shoulders. His plan was drastic: liquidate land, pivot hard into meat production. Crops aren't cutting it, he declared, his voice tight with a newfound authority that often bordered on desperation. The real money's in beef. It's the only way we save this. But the ghost of Steve Sr. still walked the fields, whispering in the ears of his other sons. Cole McBee, ever the quiet rebel, had fallen prey to his father's last, insidious advice. Trust your gut, son. You're the only one who truly loves this land. And so, behind Stephen's back, Cole had acquired more acreage, planting soybeans with a defiant glint in his eye. The revelation had ripped through the already strained fraternal bonds, leaving a chasm of mistrust. Steve Sr., though physically absent, continued to sow discord, turning brother against brother, and putting the very heart of the ranch, and the family, at risk. Then there was Galina. Galina Salkowska, Steve Sr.'s ex-girlfriend, but more importantly, a significant investor in McBee Farm and Cattle. Her presence on the ranch was a constant, simmering reminder of Steve Sr.'s personal betrayals. She stayed, not out of lingering affection, but out of a fierce determination to protect her investment, aligning herself with Stephen Jr. in the fight to salvage the business. Yet the emotional scars ran deep. Steve Sr. hadn't just left debt, he'd left a trail of broken hearts, none more shattered than Galina's after his affair with Masha, her supposed friend. The air around Galina crackled with a barely contained fury. When Stephen's girlfriend, Calla Jackson, innocently mentioned Masha's presence at the lodge, a chilling silence fell. Coincidence or not, Masha's car was found utterly destroyed soon after. While Galina vehemently denied involvement, the unspoken accusation hung heavy in the Missouri air. The expletives she'd hurled at Steve Sr.'s name were legendary, and everyone knew her rage was a force of nature. Would she lash out again, jeopardizing the very company she was trying to save, all for a taste of revenge? Galina wrestled with her focus, her business acumen battling the raw, visceral pain of betrayal. Steve Sr.'s shadow stretched long, even into the emotional landscape of those he'd left behind. And as if the financial ruin and romantic entanglements weren't enough, a darker cloud gathered on the horizon: the feds. The whispers had grown louder, evolving from rumors to concrete fears. Steve Sr.'s past had caught up to him. His conviction for crop insurance fraud, once a hushed family secret, was now public knowledge, a stain that threatened to engulf them all. Previews for the new season hinted at the FBI's heavy hand, an investigation that promised to unravel more than just financial misdeeds. What would Steve Sr.'s criminal actions mean for the farm? Would the McBee siblings, already drowning in their father's mess, have to pick up yet another piece of his shattered legacy? The uncertainty was a constant, gnawing dread. So, where in the world was Steve McBee Sr.? He wasn't on a tropical island, nor was he holed up in some anonymous motel room. Steve Sr. was exactly where he always was, at the center of the storm, even when he was miles away. He was in a dilapidated, rented cabin deep within the Ozarks, a place so remote it barely registered on GPS. The air inside was thick with the smell of stale coffee and cheap cigars. His face, usually ruddy and commanding, was now gaunt, etched with a new kind of cunning. He hadn't abandoned the show, he'd merely changed stages. From this self-imposed exile, Steve Sr. was still pulling strings, albeit with a shaky hand. He had a burner phone, its contacts limited to a few shady associates and, crucially, Cole. He was convinced he was still running the show, orchestrating moves from the shadows. His advice to Cole wasn't just about trusting instincts. It was about undermining Steven, about proving that only his way, the old way, could save the ranch. He believed Steven was too reckless, too quick to sell off the heritage. Steve Sr. saw himself as the puppet master, even as the strings frayed and snapped in his absence. He was also desperately trying to broker a new deal, a bigger, better venture that would magically erase the $6 million debt and restore his tarnished reputation. He called it laying low to make the big play.